They thought I was just a weak husband who couldn't provide. But when I uncovered their conspiracy to take my daughter, I showed them what real power looks like. At 37, I thought I'd weathered enough storms to recognize the signs. My pregnant wife's mother cornered me at our baby shower, her voice dripping with calculated sweetness. Michael, my daughter made a catastrophic mistake marrying someone who can't even afford a proper home. Thank heaven her ex-boyfriend is still available for emotional guidance. My wife Catherine giggled softly, her hand resting on her swollen belly. The humiliation burned through my chest like acid, but I simply nodded and continued arranging the borrowed folding chairs. 3 days later, my phone erupted with 42 missed calls. What I discovered about human nature that day would reshape everything I believed about family, loyalty, and the lengths people will go to protect their delusions. I'm David, 37 years old, and I never imagined I'd be sharing this story. My hands are trembling as I speak these words, but sometimes the truth demands to be told, no matter how devastating. I've been processing this nightmare for months now, and I need to release it before it consumes what's left of my faith in people. Let me paint you the picture of how this began. I met Catherine 4.5 years ago through mutual colleagues at a tech conference. She was brilliant, funny, and had this infectious laugh that could light up any room. We connected immediately over our shared love of terrible horror movies and expensive coffee. 2 years later, we were married in a small ceremony that felt like the beginning of everything I'd ever wanted. When we discovered she was pregnant with our first child, a baby girl, I felt like I could conquer the world. We'd purchased a modest two-bedroom house in an established neighborhood the previous year. Nothing fancy, mind you, but it was ours. The kitchen cabinets were from the 80s, the plumbing occasionally protested, and the backyard resembled a moonscape more than a garden. But every weekend, I'd chip away at improvements. Room by room, project by project, I was transforming it into something beautiful. Catherine seemed genuinely happy with our progress, or perhaps I was simply too blind to see the cracks forming. Her mother, Victoria, had been a persistent thorn from our first meeting. The woman possessed an uncanny ability to deliver devastating critiques wrapped in concern. "Oh, you work in software development. How modern," she'd say with that particular pause that spoke volumes. "This neighborhood certainly has." Character became her favorite assessment of our home. I'd bite my tongue because Catherine would immediately deflect. "That's just mom being mom," and change the subject before I could respond. The weekend that shattered my world began with Catherine's baby shower. Victoria had suggested, with that tone of hers, that perhaps we should consider renting a venue, something more appropriate for the occasion. I'd spent the entire previous week preparing our home like it was being featured in Architectural Digest. Fresh paint in the living room, repaired the creaking front porch steps, installed elegant new light fixtures in the dining room. Every detail had to be flawless. The morning arrived with typical August humidity, and our temperamental air conditioning chose that day to wage war against comfort. I was methodically arranging the final row of chairs we'd borrowed from Catherine's cousin when the early guests began trickling in. My shirt was already damp with perspiration, and anxiety was building in my chest like pressure in a steam kettle. Victoria arrived precisely 1 hour early, accompanied by her longtime friend from First Presbyterian, both women surveying our modest home with the expression of health inspectors discovering violations. I watched them move through our space, whispering observations behind manicured hands, their gazes lingering on every imperfection I'd failed to camouflage. I was adjusting the placement of the last chair when Victoria approached with predatory precision. She literally cornered me against the freshly painted wall, her church companion positioned nearby like a witness to an execution. What happened next still echoes in my mind with crystal clarity. "David," she began, her voice carrying that sugary sweetness that always preceded devastation, but projected loud enough for nearby guests to absorb every word. "My daughter made a catastrophic mistake marrying someone who can't even afford a proper home. Just look at this place. The roof probably leaks during storms. The floors protest with every step. And that bathroom." She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes scanning my face for the impact of each word. My jaw clenched involuntarily. I remained silent, though every muscle in my body screamed for action. Thank heaven her ex-boyfriend is still available for emotional guidance. "Did you know Christopher just purchased the most stunning new construction in Maplewood Estates?" 5 bedrooms, a dedicated home theater, granite countertops throughout. Now that's an environment for raising my granddaughter properly. I glanced across the room where Catherine stood with her sister Rebecca and several friends, her face glowing with pregnancy's radiance. And what did my wife do when she caught fragments of her mother's assassination of my character? She giggled, actually giggled while caressing her belly, as though sharing some delightful secret with our unborn child. My face burned with humiliation. My fists clenched so tightly my fingernails carved crescents into my palms. But 23 women filled our modest home, celebrating the impending arrival of my daughter. So I swallowed my pride, nodded politely, and said, "Excuse me, I need to retrieve more chairs from the garage," walking away like the spineless doormat I'd apparently become. Throughout the remainder of the shower, Victoria orchestrated a symphony of subtle humiliations. Stories about Christopher and Catherine's romantic getaway to Santorini during their college years. Questions about whether Catherine was truly confident about the baby's nursery fitting properly in such a cramped space. Loud observations about how fortunate it was that Christopher remained close to the family during these challenging times. I retreated to the kitchen, playing the role of invisible servant, refilling punch bowls, replenishing appetizer platters, clearing empty plates. None of the guests acknowledged my existence except Rebecca, who offered me sympathetic glances that somehow made everything worse. After the last guest finally departed, I began the mechanical process of cleaning while Catherine settled on our second-hand couch to examine her gifts. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, I gathered the courage to address what had transpired. "Did you hear what your mother said to me today?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. Catherine sighed with theatrical exhaustion and rolled her eyes. "Mom's just concerned about our future, David. This house genuinely needs significant work, and your career isn't exactly stable." Her words struck me like physical blows. I'd never disclosed the complete details of our financial situation to Catherine's family. I earn a respectable salary in cybersecurity, and while I'm cautious with money, a trait learned from childhood necessity, we're far from struggling. Yes, I'd experienced a layoff the previous year, but I'd secured new employment within 3 weeks. Her casual dismissal of my career stability felt like betrayal. And what was that giggling about when she was destroying our home? Our home, Catherine. The one we chose together. She immediately became defensive, her voice rising with indignation. "You're being incredibly dramatic, David." I was laughing at something Rebecca whispered to me. "Not everything revolves around you and your insecurities." But I'd seen her face. I knew what I'd witnessed. We went to bed that night with anger hanging between us like a toxic cloud. The following morning brought a different kind of tension. Catherine's phone buzzed constantly with incoming messages, and she kept angling the screen away whenever I entered the room. Red flag number 1. Around noon, while I was organizing tools in the garage, her phone rang on the kitchen counter. The name displayed across the screen made my blood run cold. Christopher. Red flag number 2. Later that afternoon, I overheard fragments of a hushed conversation from our bedroom. Catherine's voice, carefully modulated. "I know, Mom. Yes, he's being unreasonable again. No, I haven't mentioned it to him yet. I understand the timing is complicated." Mentioned what? That phrase haunted me for hours. That evening, Catherine announced she was visiting her mother to sort through baby clothes her cousin had donated. She didn't return until well past midnight. Red flag number 3. The next morning, while Catherine showered, I committed an act I'm not proud of. I examined her phone. What I discovered shattered the remaining fragments of my trust. Dozens of text messages between Catherine and Victoria discussing Christopher, analyzing my financial limitations, questioning whether our daughter deserved such humble beginnings. Then I found the message that stopped my heart. Victoria to Catherine. "Christopher confirmed his offer remains open. You'd never worry about money again. Think about what's best for the baby." Catherine's response. "I know, Mom. I'm seriously considering it." When I confronted her, we had the most devastating argument of our marriage. She stormed out, declaring she was staying with her parents until I stopped being paranoid and controlling. That was 4 days ago. This morning, I awakened to my phone exploding with notifications. 42 missed calls, 24 from Catherine, 18 from Victoria. Voicemails, text messages, desperate attempts to reach me. I hadn't listened to any of them because the previous night, Rebecca had appeared at my door with tears streaming down her face. What she revealed about the conspiracy Catherine and Victoria had orchestrated behind my back for months made me question everything I thought I knew about the woman I'd married. The truth Rebecca shared wasn't just about another man or family disapproval. It was about a calculated plan to erase me from my daughter's life entirely. If you've lived long enough, you know that moment when everything you believed about someone crumbles, leaving you staring at a stranger wearing a familiar face. That's where I am now, holding evidence of betrayal so profound it's rewritten my understanding of human nature. Should I listen to those voicemails, or should I proceed with what I'm planning now that I know the complete truth? Because what I've discovered goes far deeper than an unhappy marriage or an interfering mother-in-law. This is about three people who looked at my unborn daughter and saw an opportunity. What they didn't anticipate was underestimating the father who would fight for her. Holy hell, I never expected sharing this story would resonate with so many people. Thank you for the overwhelming support and private messages. I apologize for not responding to comments immediately. These past few days have been absolutely insane. Let me bring you up to speed on what's transpired since my last update. Those 42 missed calls I mentioned. I finally summoned the courage to listen to the voicemails. The initial messages were from Catherine, all terse and desperation, claiming I was misunderstanding everything, that we needed to talk immediately, the usual manipulation tactics. Then Victoria's messages began, each one more frantic than the previous. The final voicemail simply stated, "You need to answer your damn phone immediately before you destroy everything." Destroy everything? Me? The irony was suffocating. I didn't return either of their calls. Instead, I sent Catherine a single text message. "I know exactly what you and your mother have been orchestrating. I need time to process this betrayal. Don't come home yet." What Rebecca revealed that night when she appeared at my door, sobbing and shaking. Buckle up, because the reality was exponentially worse than my darkest suspicions. Apparently, Victoria had been masterminding this entire operation from the beginning. For the past 5 months, she'd been meeting with Christopher weekly at an upscale coffee shop downtown, strategizing how to convince Catherine to abandon our marriage. She'd been systematically poisoning everyone in their social circle against me, spreading rumors that I was essentially a deadbeat who couldn't adequately provide for Catherine and our baby. She'd been telling fellow church members that she harbored serious concerns about our daughter's paternity. Yes, she went that far. But here's the revelation that made my blood run cold. Christopher isn't just the ex-boyfriend. He's Victoria's godson. His parents and Victoria have maintained a close friendship for over 3 decades. They'd always envisioned their children ending up together, creating some kind of social dynasty. When Catherine chose me instead, a middle-class software engineer from a modest background, Victoria never accepted the decision. Rebecca showed me screenshots of a group chat between Victoria, Christopher, and Catherine. They'd been house hunting together. House hunting for a place where Catherine and our baby would live without me. Victoria had been making substantial deposits into Catherine's personal bank account, money I now know originated from Christopher's trust fund. My stomach literally churned when I read messages discussing how they would handle David once the baby arrived. Victoria had suggested Catherine file for emergency custody immediately after giving birth, claiming I was psychologically unstable and potentially dangerous. They were planning to systematically erase me from my own daughter's life, and Catherine, my wife, the woman carrying my child, had enthusiastically participated in every aspect of their scheme. After Rebecca left that night, I remained on our couch until sunrise, staring at nothing. The pain was so profound I couldn't even cry. Our wedding photographs smiled back at me from the shelf I'd built the previous summer. The ultrasound image on our refrigerator. The half-finished nursery down the hallway where I'd been carefully painting clouds on the ceiling. The next morning, I called my closest friend Marcus, the most level-headed person I know, and told him everything. He arrived within an hour carrying coffee and bagels, sat me down at our kitchen table, and said something that changed my entire perspective. Stop reacting emotionally and start documenting strategically. For the past 4 days, that's exactly what I've been doing. First, I meticulously examined our finances with forensic precision. Catherine had been systematically transferring money from our joint account into her personal one for months. Small amounts initially, $75 here, $60 there, but the total exceeded $4,000. I discovered email exchanges between Catherine and a real estate agent about houses in Maplewood Estates, the same exclusive neighborhood Victoria had mentioned during the baby shower. In one particularly devastating email, Catherine specifically inquired about school districts, writing, "I need to ensure my daughter has the best possible educational foundation, unlike the disadvantaged start my husband experienced." That comment hit me like a physical blow. I grew up in a trailer park, working multiple jobs throughout high school and college to create a better life. Catherine knew this history intimately. She understood how proud I was to purchase our home, how hard I'd worked to build something stable and beautiful for our family. Yesterday, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Christopher. "Brother to brother, you should understand Catherine's been unhappy for quite some time. Don't make this more difficult than necessary." I didn't respond, but I saved the message and added it to my growing collection of evidence. Then this morning, something happened that crystallized my resolve. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door carrying a homemade lasagna. She handed me the dish and said quietly, "This is for you, dear. Victoria told everyone at her bridge club that your wife left because you were abusive. I don't believe it for a second. My late husband had the same kind eyes as you, gentle eyes." She paused, studying my face. "Abusive men don't spend their weekends building flower boxes for their wives." Abusive. They were spreading rumors about me being abusive. That was the moment something fundamental shifted inside me. The sadness crystallized into something harder, colder, more focused. I immediately called Rebecca, who confirmed my worst fears. Victoria had been systematically destroying my reputation throughout their entire social network, telling anyone who would listen that Catherine had fled because she feared for her safety and our unborn daughter's well-being. Rebecca had been attempting to counter these lies, but Victoria wielded significantly more social influence in their community. I spent the next 6 hours in our spare room, creating a comprehensive digital file titled Evidence. I compiled screenshots, bank statements, text messages, emails, everything documenting their conspiracy. While reviewing old emails, I discovered something fascinating. Victoria's church conducts a major charity fundraiser annually, and she'd been managing the finances for over a decade. The email trail revealed significant discrepancies in the accounting. Victoria had been systematically embezzling from the donation fund for years. I also uncovered that Victoria had been pressuring Catherine's father, Robert, to remortgage their fully paid home to invest in Christopher's latest business venture. Robert had been resisting, literally the only backbone that man had ever demonstrated, and Victoria had been threatening to expose his alleged affair from a decade ago. An affair that Rebecca confirmed never actually occurred. What kind of person does this? Blackmails their own husband with fabricated infidelity, attempts to steal their daughter's baby, and embezzles from church charity funds. Around midnight, it hit me with devastating clarity. Victoria didn't just want to control Catherine. She wanted my daughter, our daughter, the ultimate trophy to display at church functions and social gatherings. A do-over opportunity with her precious Christopher positioned as the father figure. Over my dead body. The next morning, I opened a new bank account at a different institution, transferred my portion of our savings, called to freeze our joint credit cards, changed every password I could think of, and backed up all my evidence to cloud storage and an external drive. I just finished a phone conversation with Catherine, our first in nearly a week. She was sobbing, begging to come home, claiming her mother had manipulated the situation beyond recognition, that she'd been confused and overwhelmed. I told her she could collect more clothing tomorrow, but only if Rebecca accompanied her. She asked if we could salvage our marriage, whether I'd consider couples counseling. I remained silent for so long she probably thought I'd disconnected. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me. "Is the baby mine, Catherine?" She started sobbing harder, saying of course our daughter was mine, demanding to know how I could ask such a horrible question. But the hesitation before her response told me everything I needed to know. I informed her I'd be requesting a paternity test. The line went silent. Then she exploded with indignation. How dare I question her integrity after everything we'd shared, after all we'd built together? The audacity was breathtaking. "We're getting that test, whether she approves or not. Here's the thing. Even if our daughter is mine, and I pray with every fiber of my being that she is, I'm finished with Catherine. Something fundamental has died inside me. I feel nothing for her now except disappointment and profound disgust. But Victoria, for her, I feel something much darker. She attempted to destroy my life, separate me from my child, and assassinate my character throughout an entire community. And for what? Because I wasn't born into the right social class? Because our house isn't impressive enough for her standards? The revenge I'm planning isn't about getting even. It's about ensuring Victoria never destroys another family the way she's tried to destroy mine. And it begins at her precious charity gala next month, where she's scheduled to receive recognition for her years of faithful service. The entire community will be there. Even local media might cover the event. I've already discussed my plan with Rebecca, who's completely supportive. Marcus is helping me organize everything. Things are accelerating rapidly now. Victoria wants to play games? Fine. But she has no idea who she's chosen as an opponent. And Catherine? She made her choice months ago. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I'll update you after tomorrow's meeting with the paternity testing clinic, and perhaps after I have a conversation with certain people from Victoria's church about those financial irregularities I discovered. It's been 7 months since my last update. I apologize for the silence. Life became complicated in ways I never anticipated. My daughter Emma was born 9 weeks ago, and she's absolutely perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 perfect toes, and thankfully, a DNA test confirmed what my heart already knew. She's mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The morning after my previous post, I woke to a strange Facebook notification. Someone had tagged me in a post I couldn't access. Victoria had blocked me, but was posting about me publicly, calling me unstable and claiming she feared for her daughter and granddaughter's safety. The post had accumulated dozens of sympathetic comments from her church friends. The character assassination had officially begun. That same afternoon, Catherine arrived with Rebecca to collect more belongings. The moment she walked through our door, I noticed something that made my stomach clench. She was wearing a necklace I'd never seen before, an elegant diamond pendant that definitely wasn't within our budget. Rebecca later confirmed that Christopher had given it to her the previous day. While Catherine gathered her things, carefully avoiding eye contact, Rebecca discreetly slipped me a USB drive. On it were audio recordings of Victoria's conversations with Christopher and Catherine from the past month. Rebecca had been using her phone's voice memo app during family gatherings, hiding the device in her purse. That night, after they left, I listened to those recordings. My hands shook so violently I spilled coffee across my keyboard. Victoria's voice, discussing strategy with Christopher. Once the baby arrives, we'll file for emergency custody. I have a contact at Child Protective Services who can expedite the process. David won't know what hit him. Christopher laughing. The loser probably can't afford a decent attorney anyway. But the most devastating was Catherine's voice. I just need to maintain this charade for a few more weeks. Mom's right. Once the baby is here, it'll be easier to make a clean break. I just hope he doesn't contest anything. I sat there in complete darkness, listening to these people, including my wife, planning to erase me from my child's life. Something cold and hard settled in my chest, replacing the pain with crystalline focus. The next morning, I drove to the laboratory for the paternity test. In the waiting room, an older gentleman noticed my Led Zeppelin t-shirt and mentioned his son had seen them in concert recently. We struck up a conversation, and it turned out he served on the board at First Community Church, Victoria's church, the one hosting the upcoming charity gala. Coincidence? Perhaps. Opportunity? Definitely. I casually mentioned I'd heard about their annual fundraiser. He became animated, praising how Victoria had single-handedly rescued their building fund, how they were planning to name the new fellowship hall after her, how she'd been managing all the finances for years because no one else wanted that responsibility. I nodded and smiled and filed every word away. Over the following weeks, events accelerated. The paternity test confirmed what I already knew. Catherine moved permanently to her parents' house. I consulted with 3 different attorneys. Rebecca continued feeding me information, while Marcus helped me organize everything systematically. I learned that Victoria had been systematically stealing from the church charity fund for over 6 years. Small amounts initially, then increasingly larger sums as her confidence grew. The money funded Christopher's failing business ventures, designer clothing, and ironically, the down payment on a house in Maplewood Estates she'd already placed an offer on for Catherine and our baby. Meanwhile, she continued telling everyone who would listen that I was abusive, unstable, and possibly not the father. The rumors spread through their social circle like wildfire. I lost several friendships, received hostile stares at the grocery store, and someone even vandalized my car with the word abuser keyed into the paint. Through it all, I remained silent, just gathering evidence, making connections, waiting for the perfect moment. The night of the gala arrived. Rebecca texted me that Victoria was wearing a new designer dress she'd purchased with church funds, that Robert looked miserable, and that Christopher was there as Catherine's emotional support. The church was packed with Victoria's entire social circle, the mayor, local business leaders, other church officials. I waited until dinner was served before walking in. The look on Victoria's face when she saw me was worth every second of the preceding months. Her perfect makeup couldn't disguise how quickly the blood drained from her complexion. I walked directly to the pastor, handed him a sealed envelope, and simply said, "You should review this before you name anything after her." Inside, bank statements documenting Victoria's systematic theft from the church fund, records of personal purchases made with charity money, screenshots of her threatening Robert with the fabricated affair, the complete audio recordings of her planning to steal my child. I didn't stay for the aftermath. Didn't need to. As I walked to my car, I could hear raised voices from inside the fellowship hall. Victoria's was the loudest, high-pitched with panic. The next morning, the texts began flooding in. From Catherine, "What have you done?" From Rebecca, "Holy shit, it's actually happening." From numbers I didn't recognize, church members demanding more details. By afternoon, Victoria's Facebook page had vanished. The church had called an emergency board meeting. Catherine wasn't returning calls from anyone, including Christopher. 2 days later, Rebecca called me in tears. The church had discovered even more discrepancies than I'd uncovered, over $85,000 missing. Victoria was being demanded to repay everything. She'd been removed from all committees. The police were considering criminal charges. But the social fallout was even more devastating. Friends of 30 years wouldn't speak to her. Her bridge club expelled her. The country club revoked her membership application. Robert finally grew a spine and moved out, staying with his brother. And Christopher? The moment things became complicated, he disappeared. Blocked Catherine and Victoria on everything. Turned out he'd been lying about his finances too. His business was failing, and he'd been counting on Victoria's stolen money to save it. A week later, Catherine appeared at my door, 8.5 months pregnant, mascara streaming down her face. She begged to come home, claimed she'd made a terrible mistake listening to her mother, that she still loved me and wanted our family back. I looked at this woman, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no love, just complete emptiness. I told her she could return for the baby's sake, but our marriage was finished. She could stay in the guest room until after the birth. Then we'd figure out co-parenting arrangements. The next 7 weeks were awkward beyond description. We lived like polite strangers. I installed a lock on my bedroom door and set up security cameras around the house with her full knowledge. Catherine spent most days crying or staring blankly at television. I focused on completing the nursery. Emma arrived 4 weeks early. I was there for the birth, cut the umbilical cord. The moment they placed her in my arms, that hard knot in my chest finally loosened. I cried for the first time in months. The paternity test confirmed what I'd known the instant I saw her. She has my eyes, my nose, she's mine. We've established an uneasy co-parenting routine. Catherine moved into a small apartment nearby. We exchange Emma every few days. It's not ideal, but it functions. The divorce will be finalized next month. As for Victoria, she and Robert are officially separated. She had to sell her house to repay the church and cover legal expenses. She's renting a 1-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town. Her social standing is completely destroyed. Her friendship's gone. The charity named their new building after someone else. She's texted me 34 times asking to see Emma, calls me at least twice weekly, leaves tearful voicemails about wanting to meet her granddaughter, how she's learned from her mistakes, how she's fundamentally changed. The irony isn't lost on me. The woman who thought I couldn't provide, who tried to erase me from my daughter's life, is now begging for scraps of attention. Last week, while walking Emma in her stroller through our neighborhood, I encountered Mrs. Patterson. She smiled and said, "Your baby has your eyes, kind eyes." Then she handed me another homemade dish and added, "Victoria came by asking about you too." I told her to leave good people alone. I haven't decided if Victoria will ever be allowed to see Emma. That's a decision I'll make when my daughter is older, based on what's best for her. For now, I'm focusing on being the best father I can be. Our house isn't fancy. The kitchen still needs updating. The backyard remains mostly dirt, though I've started planting a small garden. But it's ours. Mine and Emma's. No one can take that away. Every night when I rock my daughter to sleep in the nursery, I finished painting myself. I know one thing with absolute certainty. This is what a real home looks like. Thanks for all the support through this nightmare. For those asking about Rebecca, she's become an incredible friend and amazing aunt to Emma. She and Victoria haven't spoken in months. And no, I'm not interested in dating yet. I've got my hands full with an infant and finalizing a divorce. Maybe someday, when the time is right. But for now, it's just me and Emma, building something beautiful together.